I bought my first apartment in Sydney in 1970. The ad in the Sydney Morning Herald read Spanish colonial apartments for sale, 45 Biriga Road, Bellevue Hill. And I wondered how a building could be Spanish and colonial. My understanding of colonial architecture were the Francis Greenway buildings on Macquarie Street in Sydney, commissioned by Governor Lachlan Macquarie. 45 Biriga Road is what became known as Spanish mission-style architecture. After I moved in, I met a local woman who remembered that when it was built in the 1930s, it was called La Paloma and that it was the pride of Bellevue Hill. The exterior of 45 Biriga Road had rough textured walls, arches and wrought iron details on the balconies, and the interiors featured twisted barley sugar columns, stuccoed walls and arched entrances with wrought iron gates. Leslie Wilkinson arrived in Australia in 1918 to take up a chair at the University of Sydney as the country's first professor of architecture. Wilkinson studied at the Royal Academy in London and had travelled extensively throughout Europe, especially in France, Italy and Spain. His conviction that an architecture should be appropriate to the country's landscape and levels of light led him to champion a Mediterranean-style architecture as the most sensible choice for home building in the salubrious sunshine of the Australian continent. Wilkinson's first building in Sydney was his own residence at Vaucluse on Sydney Harbour. He named it Greenway in honour of Australia's early Georgian architect Francis Greenway, and incorporated many Mediterranean features like rough textured walls, Cordoba round roof tiles, arches and a Spanish wall fountain. Boomerang, completed in 1926, was designed by Neville Hampson for Sydney music publisher and entertainment entrepreneur Frank Albert. The Boomerang songster was a must for young Sydney-siders. Albert sent Hampson to California and asked him to design a house for him that reflected the best of Hollywood. Tradesman, please use the Ithaca Road entrance. Del Rio on Billiard Avenue in Elizabeth Bay is a very imposing structure. It was designed by J. Spencer Stensfield and it overlooks Sydney Harbour. There are 5 garages facing onto Billiard Avenue and barley sugar columns, arches and wrought ironwork decorate the facade. Corinna, Wilkinson's 1934 Mediterranean-style apartment building in Double Bay, with its light-coloured stuccoed walls, arched windows, columns and ironwork, stands out amongst the dark brick walls of nearby buildings. 133 Macleay Street in Potts Point overlooks the El Alamein fountain. Above the ground level shop fronts, the arches and columns are typical of the Spanish mission style. The building backs onto Langkelly Place and there is a black and white tiled courtyard and a walkway through to Macleay Street. Sitting above the kebab shop on the corner of Rosslyn Street and Darlinghurst Road, hidden among the London plane trees, we find a classic building with Cordoba round roof tiles, columns and arches in the heart of King's Cross. Heading down Macleay Street towards Wild Street, we come across Ilan Court. It has pale pink stucco walls and blue Spanish tiles framing the entrance. The Cordoba roof tiles, columns and arches present a classic facade. Stanford Hall in Oak Lane, backing onto the Island Court, is typical of a transitional style of red brick apartments that incorporate some of the Mediterranean features. Houston, on Hughes Street in Potts Point, was built behind a grand Victorian terrace on Victoria Street. Heralding the arrival of the motor car, there are 3 garages with roller doors and an imposing arch superstructure that reflects the arched entrance. '81 Elizabeth Bay Crescent, looking out onto the Macleay Reserve, is a fine example of a small apartment block that has all the classic Spanish Mission style features. The Cordoba roof tiles on the fence are a nice touch. Cheddington at number 63 Elizabeth Bay Crescent is another brick apartment building that includes Mediterranean features like the tall barley sugar columns. Heading east along the New South Head Road, opposite Edgecliff Station, is the imposing Spanish Mission-style apartment building San Remo. 3 buildings make up the complex, and a Spanish wall fountain adorns the facade. F. Glyn Gilling's Villa d'Este in Woollahra is a fine example of a private dwelling in the Spanish Mission style. The house is hidden behind a stuccoed wall with typical wrought iron gates and windows. Aston Gardens at Bellevue Hill is the work of Ernest A. Scott. Massive wrought iron gates, tall columns and Cordoba round roof tiles, and the foliage reflect the Mediterranean theme. Down the hill from Aston Gardens is Miramar. Number 7 Aston Place is another example of a small block of apartments that incorporates many of the Spanish Mission style details. The heavily stuccoed walls, painted in a soft tone of cream, add to its allure. 206C at Victoria Avenue in Bellevue Hill, with its cream, heavily stuccoed walls, classic Spanish Mission style arches and barley sugar columns, and a side entrance with typical Mediterranean plantings overhanging the pathway. Wilkinson's design for Dowling House on Rose Bay Avenue in Bellevue Hill is still a stylish residence. The heavily stuccoed walls with Cordoba roof tiles and the imposing iron gates are classic. The arched veranda with its egg-shaped arches is reminiscent of Wilkinson's first house, Greenwood, at Vaucluse. Delandra at 127B Victoria Road, Bellevue Hill, and Granada at 127A are examples of the Severe style. Standing high on the hill overlooking the Pacific Ocean, they are proud of their Spanish ancestry. The Broadway, on the corner of O'Sullivan Road and Birriga Road in Bellevue Hill, is a monument to Spanish Mission-style architecture and to the motor car. Apartments are on the upper levels, and at ground level, a service station catered to the needs of motor car owners in the building and in the surrounding neighbourhood. Heading down Kahlua Street towards Bondi Beach is a small 4-unit apartment block, stylish in its simplicity. This classic small villa on Allison Road, with its Spanish wall fountain hidden behind lush palm trees, sits comfortably amongst the bungalows and apartments of Randwick. The tradesmen who painted 127 Allison Road in Coogee were a bit heavy-handed with the pink paint pot. Wilkinson's assertion that pink was a good choice for Mediterranean-style architecture inferred that it be a soft pink. The vivid blue trim at 127 reminds me of the Spanish wall fountain tiles at the Manly Pavilion. The Spanish Mission style architecture is found in the southern beach suburb of Coogee. Elwood is a typical apartment building with arches and Ballysugar columns and Cordoba round tiles, and it's only a stone's throw to the blue Pacific. Bondi Pavilion has strong connections to the Pacific coast towns of California. This grand edifice is a tribute to surfing. Duke Kahanamoku's visit from Hawaii in 1915 is seen as the dawn of Australian surfing. The Manly Pavilion, looking out across the harbour, is another example of the influence of Southern Californian Spanish mission-style architecture on the surf culture of Australia. The Manly Pavilion's Spanish wall fountain is a tribute to the skill of the architect and tradesman who created it. The flaming red tiles with blue tile trim say Spain. The grand toilet block reflects an upper-class image of the North Shore. Dungowan, on South Steine in Manly, is an example of a Spanish mission-style block of apartments on the North Shore, a very desirable residence overlooking Manly Cove and only a 5-minute walk to the Manly Ferry. An old poster for the ferry in the 1930s read, 7 miles from Sydney and 1,000 miles from Cairns. It's still true today. Craiglands on Oyama Avenue in Manly looks as though it may share the fate of Casimir, the classic Spanish mission-style villa a few doors away, which was demolished last year and replaced with modern waterfront apartments. The arched entrance with its Cordoba round roof tiles is in a sad state of repair, but the beautiful Spanish wall fountain with the budgerigar and frog perched on its rim is still in situ. The end of an era. The Spanish mission-style service station on King Street in Newtown has seen better days. Reflecting the fashion of Spanish mission-style garages built in California in the late 20s and early 30s, it has the classic Ballysugar columns and arches. The superstructure has 2 columns and an arched feature with striated lines. In the 60s, we called the garage the House of the Rising Sun.